Greetings, ladies and metal-gents, and welcome to this narration of the web series Solo Apocalypse. If you're new to this series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 32. In the end, enough people decided to leave the sleepy wood that had passed some invisible threshold, whereupon the rest decided as well. I watched them leave. They stepped through the primordial sheen framed by stone portals, and, on the other side, I watched them in return. Inside, Parker was one of the few left, along with Rose and Rickson. He looked at me. "Shall we head out then?" I blinked. "You're not leaving?" Parker looked at me, and I saw genuine surprise in his posture. He thought we were all going, and he chose to stay. "I thought you knew," he replied, looking at me astonished. "I guess I didn't. From what Jack told me, just about everyone was leaning towards leaving," I reflected. Rose gave a soft smile. "I still owe you for saving my life, Evan," she said. "Not that I can claim to be much help, but the dungeon is a way to get stronger, and I don't want to be put in that position again." Rickson looked at me, and I already knew why he was here. The same reason we were all here, if not so direct and true. "We have to level," he said, shrugging. Parker nodded, looking at all of us. "You saved a lot of people's lives. I was probably among them. The least I could do is stick around, especially when it's to my benefit." I looked at the survivors thrown into hell and found people who'd never given up. I nodded, smiling. "Be ready for anything then," and I turned around and began walking. Outside, events were less heartwarming. The darker side of humanity reared its ugly head, the inevitable depths of character that rose in times of distress. Clones 2nd through 5th were just a handful of faces among the crowd, watching a scene I judged to be unavoidable, where the disagreement between large groups became physical. I watched from multiple angles as men paraded around, interrogating survivors. They were asking for levels, classes, and skills, and more. All information that I was convinced were deeply personal and revealing, the likes of which no one should share freely. At least, not voluntarily. The thug was high enough level to harass these people without consequence. There was no doubt in my mind he actually helped him, and, in a twisted way, that was his path to survive. "Hey, I'm talking to you!" He grabbed the man by the collar, yanking him backwards with more strength than he should have had. "Name, level, and skills, and class if you have one, now!" "That's not..." The man hunched over and knocked out of him. He fell to his knees. "Answer now! We need high-level people if we're getting out of this damn swamp. Anyone who wants to stay can rot here for all I care. But if you're useful, you're coming with us, whether you like it or not." I'm level 5. I have the quick step skill," he groaned, rolling over. The man released him, allowing him to moan. "Comply, you won't end up like him," he said, addressing the crowd. People immediately began to disperse and quickly found themselves surrounded by a handful of others, apart enough that it was clear that they were with the thug. One stepped up to a woman who had tripped on a root. He reached out. "You all right?" 2nd asked, helping her up. Yeah," she said, wide-eyed, but there." "Hey," the man said, "name, level, skills, and class now." I ignored him. "You better be on your way, miss. There's bad crowd today." I smiled at her, too sharp, I think. She flinched and ran off. The man watched her go, then he eyed me. "Think you're hot stuff, huh? You might be a good fit if you're that confident." Then he frowned when I showed no reaction. More so when I started walking away. Hey, I'm talking to you, you bastard!" He reached out, trying to grab my shoulder. I stepped out of the way, and he fell off balance, glaring at me in surprise and anger. "Get the feck over here!" He lunged for me, and my elbow slammed into his face, dropping him, 4th and 5th watching from the sidelines. I continued walking. I heard him mumbling, cursing, and groaning on the floor. They'd been put enough fear in these people that the mood had drastically fallen. Anyone speaking out had instantly been silenced, appearing next day with bruises so black and blue they would have been invisible in the sleepy wood. A single name kept coming up. Later, Ralph sighed as I glanced around his newer tent. "His name is Blitz." I stared at him, and he put his hands up. "Don't ask me. That's what he's calling himself. It was fine when he wanted to just leave, but I think he's starting to like what he sees." I was in a section of the clearing where semi-permanent structures were being set up. the very bare requirements of an actual settlement or town. It felt more like an outpost in the middle of nowhere. There was an actual chair for me this time around. I'd been visiting Ralph fairly often and had gotten to know him better in the past week. At least one of my clones would stop by daily, usually bringing in food or goblin tools. Either was heavily appreciated. "He's gonna try take over. I thought their whole shtick was leaving the swamp. They're a bunch of thugs and criminals. A little bit of power and suddenly they're lording it over anyone weaker. It is disgusting," he spat. "They've taken to coming here every day. Thankfully there's always a few lads nearby. They'd steal everything if they could." "You have to expect the worst in people, I guess," I said, disappointed, as a sudden displeasing thought came to me. "Actually, they might have more of a reason to stay soon," I groaned. "Fantastic," Ralph joked. "Oh, and I've got that thing ready for you. The wood you found was actually perfect. And the stringer, it was spider silk, wasn't it? The material itself was thick, but luckily I could process it to the right tensile strength, thin it down." He placed an item on the table, an honest-to-God's bow, a curved, smooth wood, bent by the tension of that accursed spider silk. I'd actually found another one of those caves on my survey of the area. The same horrible spiders inhabited it. It had been the most nerve-wracking thing I'd ever done, even if it was a clone. Just the memories alone. I didn't stay any longer than I needed to, and I wouldn't have risked it otherwise. My perception and Solo's instinct guided me, and I escaped without catching even a wink of the arachnids I knew were in there, deeper. "How big was the spider?" Ralph broke my thoughts, looking at me. "Really big," I chuckled after a moment of surprise. "I nearly died the first time." "And you killed it?" he asked, impressed. "That kind of not without paying in blood," I said, morose. "The first time didn't go so well. This time I only went for its webs." "Ah," he said softly. "A shame." And that was all he said. Ralph was an older man, muscled, advanced in age, yet somehow hearty. He was wise enough to allow a moment of silence as I inspected the bow. I picked up the weapon. I doubted anyone among the survivors would have the technical skill to create medieval ranged weaponry. Ralph's craftsman class was invaluable. This kind of craftsmanship wasn't exactly common knowledge. "It's a good weapon. I tested it myself. Shoot straight, draw strength is incredibly high. Anything you shoot from that will pack a punch," Ralph said. "Not that I know much about bows. I made about 3 dozen arrows." "Good," I said. "I need 8 more of them. The bows." He blinked. End of chapter. I just quickly want to thank my Tier 5 channel members and patrons. Casper Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Barky, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Lord Asrical, Oakfield, and Dragzoon WRE. Thank you very much.